Welcome to this Succeed with Dyslexia webinar. Today I'm going to be catching up with Shae Wissell. My name is Julia Clouter, and Shae, you haven't seen us for a year, but you've had an incredibly busy year, a very pacey year with lots of change in your life. So we're going to be talking about that. And we're also going to be talking about the work that you've been doing through Dear Dyslexic and finding out the kind of support that you've been giving over the past year. So welcome along. It's lovely to see you again.
Thank you so much for having me back on the show.
Oh, you're welcome. So let's start by asking you about Dear Dyslexic. Could you tell us what that is, please?
So the Dear Dyslexic Foundation was established in 2015. We originally started with podcasts, and then we've grown into a national social enterprise with charitable status. So we work across the country running training. We also do a lot of advocacy and awareness raising. We work with government in doing that, and we provide a lot of peer support. Would probably be the third most important aspect of what we do.
So peer support, who are your peers? Who is asking for support? Is it mostly ladies or students, or tell me about your people?
Our people have grown significantly over the last 5 years since I started DDF. We support mainly, our primary area of focus is young people and adults, so those 16 and over, so we don't work in the child space. We really support young people transitioning into school or higher education or into the workplace, and then supporting adults that are already at work that are needing support. I should also mention that we do research as well, which is a massive component of the work we do. And through our research, we've set up a PhD support group for people with dyslexia who are doing PhDs. It's the first of its kind in the world that we know of, and we've got 20 people globally that have joined our group recently. So we do peer support in different ways. We run support groups like the PhD one we started, and we have a closed Facebook group. We also have a 1-800 number that people can dial in and get peer support through, and then we also run mentoring programs as well, so a peer mentoring another person that has dyslexia.
It sounds like a very much needed service, and it's great to hear that you are, and that service is in so much in demand, but you are someone who has also managed and been successful in a journey through a PhD with dyslexia, and I know that you were near to completing a really important piece of work when I saw you last. So tell me what's happened with your studies and your research.
So I'm at the tail end of my research now. I've submitted one paper for publication, and we're waiting to hopefully have that sitting under review, so fingers crossed it gets published soon. And I think as a little bit selfish in starting up the PhD group, because I'm part of the group, not just as a facilitator, but also a student there to learn and listen to other people. And we're so lucky that we've got Dr. Judith Hudson supporting and facilitating that group. She does a lot of work with students with dyslexia who are doing their PhDs. So we're super lucky to have her. My research is focused on young people and adults, their mental health and wellbeing. So that's the paper we're waiting to be published now. And then the second component has been looking at their workplace experiences and their lived experience as an adult. And so at the moment I'm writing a paper from dyslexic employees' perspective of what it's like to work in an Australian workplace. And the third paper I've just started drafting is from the employer's perspective, and it possibly could be one of the first type of papers published. I haven't been able to find anything where we've had the employer giving their perspective of what it's like to work with someone with dyslexia. And my fourth one, fingers crossed it all goes well, because it takes time to write, is really around dyslexia and is it a disability or a superpower? We're having, there's so much conversation and narrative around dyslexia as a superpower, or trying to look at that strength-based approach, particularly in the workplace. And so I really wanted to get an understanding from people with dyslexia's perspectives of, did they see it as a superpower or a real strength, or did they find it more of a disability? And so I'm really excited about that piece of work, and I hope to get that out by the end of this year. Hopefully, fingers crossed, at least drafted, ready for publication. So nearly there.
Fingers crossed, indeed. And I should be signing up to read that, because that's an area that interests me very much as well. And I've done a little bit of work with employers and with dyslexic adults who are trying to find their way into the workplace. And you're right, there is a tension between the skills that you have as a dyslexic person, which might be bigger picture thinking or the ability to see patterns, great negotiation skills, for example, or let me just think of another one.
Normally we're very good at problem solving.
Thank you. Problem solving and connecting those dots. So those are all fabulous skills that are highly in demand. If you have someone on your team, you probably want a dyslexic person on your team who can help support you with those areas of thinking. But at the same time, there is this tension with people who often need others to perhaps enable for them, either with reading or just supporting in certain situations. But I think we've come a long way with assistive technology, and that's making a huge difference to the way dyslexics can be effective in the workplace. How do you see the evolution of assistive tech in the workplace for dyslexics?
Yeah, I think just in general, it plays such a significant role in day-to-day life. Assistive technology in the workplace is so important for us. I think when we've got access to reasonable adjustments and accommodations, we really get to thrive in the workplace. And I think, when they're taken away or we're unable to access them, that's when it can become really disabling. And I think there are different levels for where people need assistive technology. I know for me, at a certain point, I always need a human being. And I think that, the workplace should really be accommodating in looking at not just technology, but how can we bring in other people to support in the workplace. I think there's a holistic approach to what we need. But without assistive technology, just basic spell check, I wouldn't be where I am today, or grammar check. I mean, they're some of the core issues that those with dyslexia have. And I think, that just going back to the basics of having even access to that is so important. But text to speech is huge for me. I need to be able to listen to my mistakes and listen to how I've structured the sentence so then I can fix it. So assistive technology has played a huge role in how I've been able to progress in my career and in my studies.
I think it's also really important that people have that sympathetic understanding that sometimes you do feel vulnerable and anxious about your output. Very, very, very common, I think, not just for dyslexic people, but for everybody in the workplace there. I think we have got to make our systems of support for mental health and well-being really strong in all workplaces at the moment. Are you encountering a lot of demand and support for conversations around how people can be better supported with their mental health and well-being?
Yeah, a lot of the calls we get on our 1-800 number are around peer support for mental health in the workplace. But also what my research is finding is that the mental health component is significant. And a lot of people in the workplace are bringing through trauma from school and trauma in the way they've been treated as they've grown up, and they're taking that trauma into the workplace. And then that feeling of anxiety and stress is coming through when particularly if you can't disclose your dyslexia and you've got to hide it or put a lot of strategies in place so people can't see it. So that then becomes a huge burden. And we've had many calls through our 1-800 and emails from adults who don't know whether to disclose, but the feelings of anxiety and stress that's causing in the workplace is significant for them. I think for any person with dyslexia or any learning disability or difficulty, that their mental health is always compromised when they go into the workplace if it's not a well-supported workplace where you feel psychologically safe. And many workplaces aren't when it comes to dyslexia, because they just don't have the awareness and the understanding and the skills yet, particularly in Australia, to support someone when they disclose that they've got a disability like dyslexia.
So a lot of work to be done in Australia by the sounds of things to support and accommodate people with neurodiversity, and it's so important, so critical, because we all do walk around with so much invisible baggage with us, and it can make our journeys through life really challenging, and it's not always something that other people can see, particularly if you've had those adverse childhood experiences of being dyslexic in the classroom and feeling your self-esteem wither away because you're not understood, or you look at your peers and you think, why is this not working the same way as everybody else? And that can lead to poor experiences in initially in your work life. And if you've not been diagnosed with dyslexia, you might not understand why you're failing, or in your own mind why you're failing, you know, not being as successful, or why your employers might be giving you certain feedback. And you make changes and you go on to different jobs and you think this will be different, I've sussed this, but you don't, because you're carrying the anxiety that you're going to repeat the cycle. So I think there is a huge need for support and better understanding about the issues of dyslexia across the workplace. You're doing such valuable work, Shae.
Thank you.
Really,
well, I don't know what it's like in the UK, but I know definitely here so many people are going undiagnosed because of the cost of an assessment in Australia and the lack of financial support that's accessible from the government. We have huge amounts of money being poured into other neurodiversities or neurodivergences, or whatever term you'd like to use, learning disabilities, but dyslexia really misses out. So learning disabilities are not funded in Australia at all. So access to an assessment is a significant cost. And so there are a number of people that are walking around that may feel that they're dyslexic, or know in their hearts that there's something, they've got these constant challenges, but they're not sure how to get that support. And so it's really important, the work we're all doing, to raise that awareness to people.
So if you were speaking to somebody now who is listening to this and thinking, gosh, this could be me, what would you advise them? Who would you advise them to get in touch with and talk to?
Well, within the Australian context, normally if you're an adult, a neuropsychologist could assess you. So I think looking at options for assessments, but also just coming to us and having a chat to us to see what support's available. Not everyone wants to get an assessment, so it could be that you just need some strategies to help you manage in the workplace. For others, an assessment is really important. And we always say to people, the reason an assessment is important is then you're protected under so many different acts in the workplace, so the Discrimination Act, the Human Rights Act. And so by having that piece of paper, you're able to then get some additional, or you should be getting additional support in the workplace. And if you're not, then you're being discriminated against. So, but the challenge is, how do people fund that assessment? And that's the difficulty we're in at the moment, is we really advocate for those assessments, but when you don't have the funds, it's really challenging. So I'd suggest people just touch base with us and we can talk them through the different options available.
Thank you, Shae. That's really important information. I'm going to ask you now about the impact of COVID. It's changed the shape of everything, hasn't it? And the way that we provide information and support. And it's also changed the kind of questions that people are asking. Could you tell us about how you think COVID has changed the support that you've been giving?
Well, COVID really flipped us on our heads, like everyone. I think being dyslexic, though, really helped us because it enabled us to be more creative in thinking about how we were going to survive COVID, because we really were unsure if we'd make it through. And it was through the support of our community that we were able to continue our work, and we changed everything to online. We knew that mental health was a significant issue for people, the isolation, the change from working in an office to working from home. You know, for me, it was wonderful because there was silence, even though my partner was in the other room and I could hear him. And he's on Zoom or Teams 24/7 with his work, so that, you know, having that adjustment of working with a different type of colleague. But that we knew mental health would be an issue, because for a lot of people, working from home would be good, but then you lost that collegial support that you may have had around editing or checking emails. That informal support that you can access through when you build good networks within an organisation. And I found that too. Like, I would have to say to my partner, sorry, can you come out and check this email for me, or are you able to read this report before I send it off? And, you know, I was lucky I had that, but he was really busy, so interrupting his day was a challenge. So there were issues like that we knew people were facing, that adjustment. So we started a mental health and thriving series where once a month we would talk to a psychologist about different topics, managing at home, you know, the 5 key things to looking after your mental health, trying to get some exercise. So that was one of the big things. And we put out a lot of stuff through our community, like weekly or every 2 weeks I'd be doing Facebook Lives, just chatting to our community saying, you know, this is really tough for me. I know it is, particularly I was in Melbourne and we were locked down for a long time, not as long as the UK. But we knew that was a big issue, and that's the calls that were coming through were really around that type of support and how you managed in a different work environment. And so we did that. We also started running more peer support Facebook Lives once a month as well, so talking to other dyslexics to talk about how they were managing with COVID, what strategies they were putting in place now they were working from home. And I think they were 2 of the key things, and also running our Faces of Dyslexia campaign, where we ran a national art competition, getting people to express how they were feeling through art as well. So there were a couple of things we did, but the main focus really last year was around supporting mental health, because we knew that our community would be struggling a lot more than others around those changes that they were facing.
Thank you for providing so much support and making sure that the wheels didn't fall off the bus, Shae, because it certainly, I think it's been terrifically difficult for everybody in every country. And when your support network goes down, it does leave people feeling so very vulnerable. So thank you for continuing to support and help people. Such an important service that you provide, and I know it's really appreciated.
Thank you. I really wouldn't have been possible without the support of the community. I mean, we were just so filled with gratitude for the financial and the volunteer support that we received over that period. It was amazing, and we were so lucky for it.
So let's move on and talk about teacher training. And the reason I want to talk about this is because I'm aware that in the UK, newly qualified teachers are having a pretty bumpy time of it because they've not been able to get into the classroom in the UK. I'm aware that we have greater numbers of dyslexic teachers coming through into the system, which is wonderful, really great. But also that this particular period of time has presented some challenges for them too, because they've not been able to get that mentoring and support that they would have previously had. So I wanted to ask you if you've been talking to teachers in Australia.
We have spoken to teachers, and we've spoken to parents as well around the struggles with COVID and the support needed at home for dyslexic children. What we have found recently is that we've got teachers coming out of university with their certificate ready to work, but they have to sit a literacy and numeracy exam that's run by a different peak body. I don't know if it's the same in the UK, whether you need to do something like that. But what we're finding is there are a number of teachers that have managed to get through university, and then they go to sit this exam and they're not passing because they're struggling with their dyslexia. They're struggling because of the timing, like the time it takes to do the test. I think it's 65 pages or something long, and they've only got 2 hours to do it. And that the reasonable adjustments just aren't good enough for what they need as people with dyslexia. It's not being considered at the moment. And so we have been in conversations with ministers. We've written to the peak body in Victoria around some of the challenges that teachers with dyslexia are having. And so I think we're in for quite a long battle around how we can better support dyslexic teachers. If you've come through and you've qualified, then there must be some way that they can get additional support. And, 15 additional minutes or 20 minutes is not enough. I mean, we have to be practical and realistic. And some of these tests now are online because we're working from home. So there should be more reasonable adjustments, whether that's text-to-speech or, the ability to listen to the questions rather than having to read them. There's so many things that could be on offer that at the moment it is not. And so we're looking at how we can better support our teachers coming through that do have dyslexia when they get to that exam.
Because and unfortunately, otherwise you're going to exclude lots of amazing people from the teaching profession. Yeah. And you're right, in the UK, we do have the numeracy and literacy standard tests. Yes, they happen after you've committed a year of and plus of teacher training and gone through and started your first placements. I became a teacher prior to these tests happening. And I'll tell you my story briefly, and that is I'm dyscalculic. Mathematics just does not happen in my brain, really. And when I went to apply for my teacher training, I had to say, I'm so sorry, the highest grade I have achieved is a D for my GCSE maths, and I don't seem to be able to improve upon that. And I had a long conversation with a lady at the university that I trained at, which was Brunel University, and explained all of the great things that I'd been doing and how determined and passionate I was about going in to be a teacher. And she sat with me and she said, you will have to do your entry test for mathematics. However, I will provide you guidance and support before you go in and do that test. And she said, you know these things because you've been doing this at evening class, it's fine. And she just reassured me. And I got through the test and I got my pass grade. Without the support of that teacher, that professor, I don't think there's any way I would have gone into the teaching profession. And I needed that human support and kindness and understanding. Clearly, she saw something in me and she recognised that I would be a good teacher, for which I'm very grateful. But that's not an opportunity that other students are getting. I think that was quite a special moment in my career, really, where that recognition happened.
Yeah, I mean, I started I left school and wanted to become a teacher, and I couldn't even pass the end of year exam for maths and English. So I was like, something doesn't seem right. And it wasn't many years later I was diagnosed with dyslexia. But even in my master's degree, I failed counting twice, and I finally had this lecturer and I said to him, this is my third time. I've always had tutors. I don't know why I keep failing, but I desperately need to pass this because I'm nearly at the end of my master's degree. And I would go in every week. He would sit through and go through all the sessions with me. He spent so much time with me, and at the end he let me do an oral exam rather than a written, because I could explain the answer, but when I wrote it down I'd get my decimal places mixed up. And he could see it. He could see me translating that information incorrectly. So he knew I knew the content. But again, that's very rare to happen. And it's outside the formal support networks. Like, that was his choice, because I was open and upfront at the beginning and said, this is my third time, I've struggled so much. And there's just no informal support like that anymore. And for me, it seems so wrong that you should get through your whole degree and pass it and have come out with this huge debt, and then to not be able to pass this one exam when you've got a disability, to me is disgusting. I think it's so wrong. It's not fair on so many levels. And so I think the systems need to change.
I think that there's a lot of work that needs to be done in Australia to be supporting not just dyslexic teachers who are just graduated, but also across a number of industries where those people have done their degree and then they're expected to sit an exam without the appropriate reasonable adjustments or accommodations. And I think there's still a lot of work that needs to be done in Australia to better support people that have done so well in getting their degree with dyslexia. It's such a huge achievement, and they should be so proud of themselves, and to be then put another barrier in front of them like this is just really, really disheartening. So I hope in time we're able to make some change around it.
The change can come, and that people recognise that if you are dyslexic and you have been successful in a course, you have done it with tenacity, and it has been tiring, and you have kept going despite feeling that perhaps sometimes the challenge is almost beyond your capacity, and that's fabulous stuff that needs to be recognised. Really, it takes a lot of skill to keep going when you're dyslexic and studying.
Sure does.
Really sure does. I think the hardest thing that you do is when you choose that you're going to study again with dyslexia.
Mm-hmm. Yes,
absolutely.
Yes, I think my doctorate will be the last bit of study, though I do joke to my family I might do a prof doc, and they all said no more study after your doctorate.
So let's talk about you, Shae. Things have changed hugely for you since I spoke to you last. So what's happened in your life? We'd love to know.
Oh gosh, where do we start? Well, I had 2 babies this year, one metaphorical, I guess. I launched my book, The Hobo CEO.
Well, let's look at the picture of that. Hang on a sec.
Yes.
So if you just say, I launched my book, The Hobo CEO, and I'll find that slide for you.
Well, I had my first baby, so I launched my book, The Hobo CEO, A Year in the Life of a Dyslexic Social Entrepreneur. And I think I must have given you an old version because I can see entrepreneur is spelled wrong there as a pure dyslexic. Do you know, when that came across to me when we were doing the book cover, and I picked it up straight away, even though I really struggled to spell entrepreneur, part of me was thinking, do I just leave it because that's so dyslexic? Or do I actually fix the spelling? And in the end, I fixed the spelling. But I just thought it was hilarious when it came back like that. So I launched my book, which I was so grateful you attended, Julia. Thank you again. And really, the book was a journey, a year in the life of running the foundation and moving out of my house and living with my sister and her 2 children at the time, and the ups and downs of trying to run a startup and trying to get the foundation from that startup phase to a really sustainable business, and how it wasn't successful in that year at all in trying to do that. But the ups and downs of life with dyslexia and trying to run a business. So I launched that in March. And then in April, I had a real baby. So I had my beautiful baby daughter, who's now just over 3 months old, Ava, and she's the love of our lives, and it's just a whole new world that we're living in. So I'm glad I got my book done before she came along, because trying to write papers for publication for my doctorate with a 3-month-old is a lot more challenging than I thought, and running the foundation. So, there's been some huge changes, but all really exciting life changes for us.
Oh, we wish you every success. And yes, juggling with dyslexia is quite a skill, and we applaud you for all you do, for sure.
Oh, thank you. I've only forgotten the bottle once, I think. Whole new way of being organised. That my sister said, "Oh, I need to give you some different things to help you stay organised, because there's been stuff everywhere." And I'm like, "Yeah, this is just how we roll." Dyslexic life.
Well, thank you so much. I'm just going to go to our closing slide now and say, Shae, thank you so much for participating in the Succeed with Dyslexia webinar. It's been wonderful to catch up with you and find out what's been happening. I'd really like everybody to save the date for the Dyslexia Learning Festival happening in Australia on Wednesday, the 27th of October. We have some fabulous speakers. It's a day-long festival of information, support, ideas and events. We'd love you to come along. You can find that information via www.succeedwithdyslexia. No, you can't. Via www.dyslexialearningfestival.org. There we are. And you'll be more than welcome to sign up and find out more. And Shae, you've got an event coming up too. Do you like to share your date?
Yes. Backing on to your Dyslexia Learning Festival, we will be running our first online conference. So that'll be on the 29th of October. And our focus was really around young people and adults transitioning into the workplace. So we'll have some amazing speakers, speakers on advocacy and dyslexia and the law. We're just getting the program ready now, but tickets will be on sale shortly. So it's really exciting that you'll be having yours midweek, and then we'll be wrapping up Dyslexic Awareness Month with our conference as well. So
That's
all
right.
the best to yours.
Thank you. Yes, wish you all the best as well. October's the time for us to make sure that everybody's thinking about dyslexia. So please do join us for these very important and very good events that are ahead. Shae, thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been wonderful to talk to you again.
You're welcome.